Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. And with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on the Psycho Pass movie, which I just got done watching, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. One of the most satisfying anime movie experiences I've had in a long time, and just movie-going experiences all told. This story and the action and the pacing and seeing these characters coming back to the fore, Akane, Kagami and all of that, it was awesome. Basically we're opening with this terrorist group of like 5 to 8 people coming into Japan and trying to stir stuff up and, seemingly take down Sybil or get noticed by Sybil or whatever's going on. And of course, Akane and her faction are put into motion. And it's just a really, it kind of reminded me of like the Bond movie aesthetic where we open on a case already unfolding, that kind of thing. And once that's done, we have the opening credits, which is awesome. I love the OP music for the film. And of course, in the aftermath of this, we see that essentially they have leads to Kagami still being out there. They find that he's in this smaller offshoot country that is undergoing its own sort of military and governmental strife. And the bigger picture, which was kind of like, I figured this was kind of where they would be going with this story, is sort of the world domination angle, if you will, at least in the confines of what Sybil system might look to do if unfettered, with no sort of opposition that can stand toe-to-toe against Sybil. It could really try to conquer the world, and most of the world in this not-too-distant future aesthetic is at war. Many countries are war-torn, and there's the government versus the people, the impoverished, all of that stuff. It seems to be, via the dialogue, the same case all over the world. And of course, Akane having this brought to her attention that Kagami is out there, he's in this smaller country, well, they basically decide, she requests, but it's seeming to imply that maybe there's something more going on here to create that impetus for her to want to make this request. But she requests to go on her own to track him down, investigate what's going on. And the turmoil and the former civil war of this country and the setting up of a new sort of offshoot of Sybil, all of these things are coming into question as Akane tracks down and tries to face Kagami once again and see, where he's at and everything like that. And I won't be spoiling the film in case you haven't seen it. It's still relatively new in release. But it was just a really compelling and satisfying story, as I say. Seeing them come together not too long within the time frame of, the unfolding story, and seeing Akane figuring out her way. There's a lot of interesting dialogue where characters are saying, wow, you really haven't changed at all. Especially with Kagami, his morals and his sort of attitude, the little guy versus the government versus Sybil in this particular case, haven't changed, but I still sense that he has evolved to a point. Akane definitely among the most of the characters to have an evolution of sorts, a character evolution. She's definitely come a long way, and it's sort of, pinpointed by Kagami in a line of dialogue where he says, well, at least you've learned to talk back, because she was very timid when they first met, and all through that journey going up against Makishima. And, it's even Gino, Ginoza, he has come a long way as well. And there's dialogue toward the end of the film where you have Akane saying to him, well, you really haven't changed. You want to shoulder the burden. And that's only sort of one small aspect of his character that hasn't changed. But by and large, I think he has, because of his interactions toward the end of the piece with Kagami and how that all plays out. It's just really, really, as I say, a satisfying watch. And the only minor thing that I think could, make this movie-going experience something lesser for a viewer is if they might not be familiar with Psycho Pass, because there are references to Makishima, and we see that in a certain sort of, manner of speaking, Makishima's ghost, if you will, his spirit, has become sort of the conscience of Kagami. In a way, that is to say, he's kind of like the Jiminy Cricket, but if Pinocchio, struck back and was like, no, I'm not just going to listen to you and go by the seat of my whims, and I'm actually doing things with forethought. I'm not just being impetuous, and which is what the Makishima sort of spirit, this conscience, is asking of him when he does make his appearance. And there's some allusions in the dialogue when Akane and Kagami meet that he is still haunted by Makishima to a point, and we don't actually understand what that means until this point, this scene where we do actually see a physical manifestation of Makishima kind of taunting Kagami and challenging his perceptions, and whether or not what he's deciding to do at the time when Makishima appears is a matter of pride, or is it a matter of justice, and all these kinds of things. All these questions come to the fore in this entire story. And there's also the aspect, playing off, again, that world domination aesthetic, Sybil trying to take over this local government. You basically have infighting going on between the chairman, a man named Han, and the chief sort of military leader, and it's quite intriguing because they are obviously at odds, but there's more going on to it, as I say. The impetus that Sybil has implanted in Akane to go here in the first place, there are multiple reasons why that is, that are uncovered as the story unfolds, and there are revelations, which is no stranger. Anyone who has ever watched Psycho-Pass knows not everything is quite as it, appears to be at first, and you will find things out along the journey as to the real facts of the events and the story and all that kind of stuff. I was kind of sad that we didn't get to see a lot of interplay with some of the background characters surrounding Akane and everything. Shion was probably the most we actually see outside of Gino and Kagami and former characters we're familiar with. There was actually a standout group of characters of these special forces mercenaries, these mercs, who kind of reminded me of like a hybridization of the characters from Black Lagoon and the characters from Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, like the Section 9. And sort of their leader looks like Jax from Mortal Kombat as well. He's like a black guy with, cybernetic arm and cybernetic leg, actually. And these characters are really interesting, and I thought, because they are sort of antagonists alongside all of the rest of the antagonists as the story unfolds, you're finding out about. They're sort of, mercs for hire for the bad guys, if you will. And they go up against, Kagami and Akane respectively. They're meant to capture them, take them down, whatever it is. And I really thought these were standout, breakout characters that were their story not sort of snuffed out by the end of the film, without wanting to reveal too much how that all happens. I could have seen them getting an offshoot, a spin-off series of their own, really, and they could still really do that as a prequel series building up to it. I mean, there wasn't much screen time, there wasn't much dialogue, but just their skills and their prowess, the unity of their group, and the success of, what they accomplished in having to go after Kagami and, of course, Akane. It just seemed really interesting to me, these characters. They were breakout characters, as I keep referring to them, and would have liked to have seen more of them. And overall, I mean, this film, the scoring was just pitch perfect. A lot of times, I had my sister actually sitting with me watching it, and, she would comment, oh, that sounds like the score from, like, the Spider-Man movies. There were some score elements that reminded me of Bond movie stuff, all different kinds of things. Just really sweeping elements, ramping up the tension of the action sequences, ramping up the adventurous feel of, sort of when the good guys escape and are going into the planning stages of their next move, and all these different things. I mean, the cinematography of the film, there was never a dull moment. Every single aspect of it, from scene to scene, there was maybe one scene where you don't see a character because he's behind like a sort of mechanized, computerized screen, and you can only see him just barely like silhouetted, which is the only scene in the entirety of the film where it's kind of lackluster. Everything else is popping, looks absolutely snazzy as all hell. There are sort of, cinematic, I guess you could say, nods to other filmic works and filmographies and such like that. Like, there are aspects toward the end of the film that sort of look like, the Ghost in the Shell film from 1995, and the original film, that is to say. And there are actually aesthetics like that because of this just, not too distant future, futuristic sci-fi environment anyway. But it's just really cool how this all plays out, and seeing Akane being legit, sort of the action hero, but being very smart about it. And I like that we got to actually see in sort of a cameo appearance Saigajuji, Kagami's mentor, talking to Akane. He has become, fastly become sort of Akane's go-to guy as a mentor, not only to understand and process her own internal mechanism and thinking and conscience and all those things, her intellect, but it's a matter of also fleshing out, well, what is Kagami's purpose? What is his impetus? Whereas we know from the get-go that Sibyl's kind of pushing Akane along for its own devices, its own planning, and the aftermath of all of these different puzzle pieces coming together, it seems as though you're led to believe, sort of just before the credits begin, that good has succeeded, justice has succeeded. And without wanting to give too much away, much as the first series of Psycho Pass and the second series of Psycho Pass ended, it ended on a high note, but there was still a hint that the story was not fully resolved as yet, that perhaps the justice that was perceived in those final moments isn't exactly how it's going to all add up after all. And that is to say, the post-credits scene that you get, very much, it just, Kagami just sort of bows his head and sighs, and that the adventure will continue in some shape or form. I hope we get another series, something along those lines. I would be very welcoming to that. I love Psycho Pass, the environment, the characters, the very intellectual feel of it, and they really well managed, I felt, to match that intellect and that telling a good story with a lot of actiony moments and elements. And it was just a really awesome experience watching this film from beginning to end. The only other minor gripe that I might have for some viewers, it might be hard to deal with sort of the English speaking parts. I went into it not knowing that there would be both English and Japanese dialogue, and some of the English is spoken by the Japanese, voice artists, and it's kind of broken English a little bit here and there, and even with subtitles on the screen to tell you what they're saying, sometimes it doesn't quite sound right, and that could be just a minor quibble, but it doesn't deplete from the awesomeness of the story and the satisfaction of the story when you see all this stuff come to a head and how it builds up to that and leads to that crescendo and the sort of, pacifying wave that releases by the end in just a sigh of relief in a sense, just because it was a great movie-going experience. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you've seen Psycho Pass, the movie, what you thought of it, if you loved it as much as I did, and I really did. I really had a great time watching this film. I didn't know what to expect, and how they would encompass telling a Psycho Pass story in just a, movie time slot. Usually they have much longer to deliberate the story, if you will, over 26 episodes or 12 episodes, whatever it is. And some people were complaining that season 2, because it was only half the length, went a little too quickly. And I could see people maybe complaining about this movie along that line, if not being objective about it and just enjoying the story for what it is. And I think the story was great and very interesting and such like that. So as I say, I'd love to hear from you what you thought of it. If you liked it, like me. If you didn't like it, if not, why not? Anything goes in the comments below. Love having the conversation. And so yeah, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.